with a car, you got to change the oil, rotate the tires, so forth and so on. With mental illness, you have to have a safe care plan: diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation, medication. And then there's you need a safety plan if things go sideways. And you buy a car, what do? You get a AAA membership. You got a spare tire in the trunk. You got flares and a first aid kit.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I interview thoughtful, inspiring, and influential guests who are creating their legacies and contributing to the greater good. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist and fellow Zestful Ager. And this podcast is my way of bringing some light into the world, which is feeling pretty dark and broken right now. Our music is courtesy of Judy Banker, a previous guest on Zestful Aging, and Judy is also an eating disorder treatment specialist who clinically supervised me in Ann Arbor in the early 90s. And little did I know that 20 years later, we would be collaborating on a very different kind of project. Find out more about Judy on her website, judybanker.com. Well, as always, I've got my little loyal Jack Russell Sparky right by my side, so let's begin. We have a great interview for you today, extremely important and thought-provoking. We're going to be talking to Frank King, who was a writer for The Tonight Show for 20 years, and now he's a suicide prevention speaker and trainer. Depression and suicide run in his family. He's thought about killing himself more times than he can count, and he's fought a lifetime battle with major depressive disorder and chronic suicidality, turning that long, dark journey of the soul into 5 TEDx talks and sharing his life-saving insights on mental health awareness with associations, corporations, and colleges. Welcome to the show, Frank.
I'll do my best to be inspiring. I will.
Okay.
I really will.
Well, we're holding you to that. Let's talk about, as you call it, the elephant in the room and this paradox between being a comedian and talking about the darkest subject possible, which is suicide. How do those two things go together?
Well, the comic is a good choice. If you think about it, ever since the time of the court jester, the comedian's job has been to speak truth to power on behalf of the powerless with humor. I believe I speak truth to the power of mental illness on behalf of those often powerless in its grip with humor. Number 2, I believe where there's humor, there's hope. Where there's laughter, there's life, that nobody dies laughing. And number 3, as you mentioned, depression, suicide run in my family. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was all of 4 years old. I screamed for days. And I came close enough to killing myself in 2010. I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. So I think that qualifies me to talk about, at least not as a clinician certainly, but as someone with lived experience. And the comedy is it's a way, well, there's a reason they call it comic relief. It's not jokes, it's funny stories from my own mental health journey that I pepper the keynotes with to give people there's a psychological principle apparently that if you have something serious, something really dark to tell someone, then if you give them a little sort of comedy sherbet to clear the palate, and then they're ready for the next chunk of, of suicide, depression, mortality, morbidity, whatever it happens to be.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that most comedians that you've met in your long career also suffer from depression?
We have a podcast called the Suicide Prevention Punchline for that very reason. It's comedians tend to kill themselves frequently, more frequently than the average person. And I think comedians and creatives and entrepreneurs, I think I put them all in the same category.
I see. That's really interesting. I've watched some of your TED Talks. You have a lot of them out there. You've done a lot of work in this field. And I was curious because you talk, of course, a lot about the genetic predisposition. You talk about suicide running in your family, the horrific way that your great aunt died. And I'm wondering about your understanding about depression and suicidal thinking. Are you a nature nurture kind of guy, or what's your theory?
I believe nature, although being that close to my great aunt's suicide at age 4, I would say that probably upped the chances that at some point in time I would consider taking my life. But I believe I'm hardwired for it familially. The good news is I believe, and I did a TED Talk on this called The Evolutionary Advantages of Mental Illness, that I believe my depression, thoughts of suicide are simply the flip side of my comedic ability, stage presence, timing, imagination, creativity. It's a package. It's a disability and an ability, or a disability and a capability all wrapped up in one. Because I can teach you to do stand-up. I can teach you to write stand-up. What I cannot teach you to do is process information the way my brain does. I always thought everybody heard, we all hear and see the same things, basically. And I figured everybody else was, processing the way I did, and I just happened to be beating everybody to the punchline. And that turns out that's not. I had a couple of experiments, and it turned out that's not true. They hear the same information or see the same information, but the processing is entirely different.
So what's your filter? How would you describe your perspective that's different than somebody else who may be hearing and seeing the very same thing?
Well, I was on a plane in Atlanta, getting ready to leave Atlanta on Delta. Flight attendants generally out of Atlanta, very southern, because that's a Delta base. It was a day after the FAA had said you can use your iPhone or iPad on takeoff or landing if you have it in the airplane mode. So the problem with the flight attendant at this point is he could do the usual safety instructions in their sleep, but this is not written down anywhere, so they've got to make up something to tell us about this new rule. So she goes through the oxygen mask, floor breath lighting, seat cushion. She gets to the business about using your iPad or iPhone on takeoff or landing, and she goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, due to new FAA regulation," and you can almost hear her thinking. Then she gets inspired. "Due to new FAA regulation, if you have small equipment, you can continue playing with it." Well, I'm the only one on the plane laughing. I'm doubled over. My seatmate thinks I've lost my mind. He goes, "What?" I go, "Let's review." Before I can review, she comes back on and goes, "If you have large equipment, you're going to have to shove that under the seat in front of you." So I'm down on my knees. So everybody on the plane heard the same piece of information. Only I processed it in that comedic. Comedy is a game of connections, connecting to two things that sometimes have nothing to do with one another. That's where the funny is. And comedy oftentimes is in the anomaly. What's wrong with this picture? What doesn't belong?
I see.
And so that's what comedians are good at doing, is spotting the anomaly. And we're great noticers of things. During the last recession, I never thought I'd ever use that phrase, last recession, I tried out to be a police officer with a variety of departments in the state of Washington and did several oral boards. And one of the questions that kept coming up was, what's the connection between comedy and policing? I said, well, we are both essentially paid observers. We are great noticers of things other people walk by and never give a second thought to.
I see.
Tickles my brain somehow. I stop, turn around and think, now something is wrong with the... that's the connection between policing and comedy, is that ability to, when I'm walking through the grocery store, and there's a couple on the other aisle next to me, I'm actually paying attention to their voices, consciously or unconsciously, and I can hear tension in their vocal cords. I can hear when things are going sideways and say to myself, that's not going to end well. Whereas most people just wouldn't even pay attention to the fact there's somebody in the next aisle. So it's just a matter of, and I firmly believe that the processing is a function of my wiring or miswiring, depending on how you look at it. Because what gave me the idea for the TEDx was pretty much everybody I've ever met who had a mental illness, who wasn't completely dysfunctional, had some kind of superpower. And I said that to my sister, who lives with anxiety and major depressive disorder, and she goes, "Superpower? We're not the X-Men. We're the Xanax Men."
Lovely. Yeah. Beautiful. So this is what I'm thinking about. By the way, I totally know what you mean about, as a therapist too, right? We're taught to have our antenna out for things that are not just the spoken word that were like, oh, that doesn't feel right, or that body language doesn't match with those words and stuff. So I know what you're saying. What I'm curious about is, so having this filter is really helpful, this observational superpower, but then you go too far and you're disabled and you can't use it.
Well, I've written some of my best material when I was, with men, oftentimes depression and anxiety present as anger.
Yes.
And I've written some spectacular material when I was really angry. So, there's a power, there's an energy to depression, thoughts of suicide. And rather than fight it, which I did for years, and I used to say I battle depression, which is not accurate, because battle implies I can win, and I can't. I can tie, like North and South Korea, uneasy truce, or I can die and lose, but I can't win. So there's a martial art called Aikido, which is, they call it a soft martial art, because you don't go at someone with energy as they're coming at you with energy. Mm-hmm. In Aikido, you blend. You move offline and you blend with their energy, and then you take their balance. And the idea is nobody gets hurt. So I try to take an Aikido approach to the energy behind depression, to blend with it, to continue moving forward. As uncomfortable as it is, it has a great power, an energy. And so I try my best to use that energy in a positive fashion, keep putting one foot in front of the other, if that makes sense.
Does it have an identity in your mind? Like, say you've been doing well and not feeling, having suicidal thoughts. Are there little inklings or little hints or whispers that, it's about ready to pounce? What are your first sort of observations that, it's about ready to expand or increase?
Well, actually, the two conditions, major depressive disorder and chronic suicidal ideation or chronic suicidality, are separate entities for me. One does not necessarily, the thoughts of suicide as an option are always there. The story I tell them in my TED Talks is, my car broke down and I had 3 thoughts unbidden: get it fixed, buy a new one, and I could just kill myself. It's always an option on the menu as a solution. The depression, and then the depression, on the other hand, I've been most depressed at some of the best times in my life. Condo paid off, money in the bank, bookings, married to a wonderful woman, living in San Diego, lovely place, but just wretchedly depressed. So it's generally not situational. A situation can trigger it, like in 2010, business dropped off 80% in the speaking business. We lost everything in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and that pushed me to the edge of killing myself, because I had $1 million life insurance policy, and like a lot of people at that time, I thought, the world would be better off without me. My wife will be heartbroken, but she'll no longer be broke. And so the two are different for me. That the way I describe the suicidal ideation is, it's sort of like a mental muzak. When you go into the grocery store, there's always music playing in the background. You don't always notice it unless it happens to be a song you really like or a song you really dislike. It's sort of like DOS running under Windows. It's always there. It just every now and then, sometimes the smallest. Yeah, sometimes the smallest things. Wife gets mad at me. Well, forget it. I'll just kill myself. Not a serious thought. I'm not gonna. As a matter of fact, the suicidal ideation, suicidality, keeps me alive in an odd way, because I know if the pain gets too bad, that I have a way to end the pain. And so, if it weren't for my chronic suicidal ideation, I probably would have killed myself a long time ago. Strangely. Ironically.
How is it in your relationship, in your close relationships, like with your wife? Does she already know how things are going, or do you say it's been a hard day? I mean, how do you guys talk about that?
Well, you asked earlier about how I know it's happening. I can feel myself cycling down. What it feels like is, the simile I use is, it's like somebody is slowly turning up the force of gravity and turning down the contrast and color in the world. And my cycle was about a 3-day cycle. Down one day, flatten out, up the third day. And I began taking medication at age 60. And all of a sudden, it was a 2-day cycle. And it didn't happen as often. And I thought when I finally realized what the medication was doing, I thought to myself, why did I wait so long? But I treated myself with something called SAMe. Buy it over the counter, buy it at Costco. It's good for mild depression. And also good for your knees and your liver, by the way. But by the time I got to 60, my wife goes, look, just ask your doctor for something. Just tell him the situation. And now every doctor is supposed to ask you those 2 questions when you go in. Anytime you see them, those 2 gateway questions. And if you answer yes to one of them, that you've been hopeless in the last 2 weeks or whatever, they're supposed to ask you 7 more. Well, my doctor had never asked me those questions. So when I said, I think I may need some antidepressants, he says, why would you say that? And I told him about my car broke down and I had 3 thoughts. And he pulled out his prescription pad immediately. And fortunately for me, the first choice, the one he chose, worked for me, and it's a relatively small dose. He offered to bump it up, and I said, no, it's just enough to take the edge off. I'm fine.
Why did you wait so long, Frank?
Well, the SAMe took the edge off for about 20 years. It was enough, 400 milligrams first thing in the morning to take the edge off, and I would cycle. Every couple of months I would cycle down for a couple of days, then cycle back up. And I just didn't feel like I needed a pharmacological, a psychotropic solution. And probably wouldn't have done it then, except my wife goes, look, you're 60. I mean, just ask him. Maybe there's something, maybe it'll make a difference. Who knows? And, of course, once I had it, 2 weeks in, she noticed a difference in my personality, but didn't say anything. She wanted to see if I noticed. 3 weeks in, my first thought was, oh, my God. Here's the thought I had, by the way, which I hadn't had since high school. It came up, it bubbled up by itself. I like my life. I've got a good life. I do what I want, what I love for a living. Beautiful wife, house, wonderful animals. I mean, I have a good life, but I hadn't thought that thought, I like my life, since high school. So that's how I knew it was working.
Oh, goodness, 45 years.
Yeah. So, but, doing what you love for a living helps take the edge off. I've been doing stand-up comedy for 34 years and change, and that's exactly what I believed I should be doing. But, my 4th TED Talk was Suicide, the Secret of My Success, where I said, look, I'm married to a wonderful woman, but not the right one. I'm selling insurance, great business, not for me. And I wasn't going to open mic night, which is where I thought I belonged. And so I realized sooner rather than later I was going to kill myself. And then my second thought was, well, what have I got to lose? I divorced my wife, quit my job, try comedy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, shoot, I can still kill myself. And I've met a goodly number of people, entertainers, creative types, and entrepreneurs, have the very same thought process. Living a life they didn't think they belonged in, had a dream, thought they should be pursuing it, came to the conclusion, man, if I don't change something, I'm going to kill myself. And then, it's an amazingly powerful position to be in, because I had absolutely nothing to lose. I could put it all on one roll of the dice and see what happened.
Talk a little bit about writing for The Tonight Show. Were you feeling depressed throughout your 20-year tenure there?
Well, like I said, my depression comes, used to last 3 days, now it lasts about 2. Used to happen about every other month, now about every 3rd month. So I'm generally, my days, good days, far outnumber my bad days. That's one of the myths, I believe, that people believe about depression, thoughts of suicide, that if you're depressed and having thoughts of suicide, it's that way 24/7, 365. I had in 2014, 2 weeks before my first TED Talk, I was in the woods with the dogs. I've had, in addition to a sense of humor and depression and suicidality that I inherited from my family, my dad had a bad heart valve, so I had mine fixed. He died at 40. I had mine fixed at 39. And my mother had the cholesterol of a deep-fat fryer. So I had a double bypass. I was taking 2 statins. And still, I'm in the woods with the dogs, half mile up a logging trail. I've got T-Mobile, so I don't have cell service. And that never fails to get a laugh, by the way. And I had a heart attack. In the woods with the dogs, by myself, no cell phone. And I tell the story when I speak to illustrate that if I had been in a bad place that day, if I had wanted to die by suicide, that would have been a very socially acceptable way to do it.
I see. You would have just let it let it take its course.
Yes, and only the dogs would know that I chose. When they found me, they would see the signs of a heart attack, death, and they would say, oh, wow, he had a heart attack. He couldn't get out of the woods. Why didn't he phone? Oh, T-Mobile. Oh, man, too bad. So, and people always ask me as I'm going back down the hill with the dogs, what I'm really worried about is the dogs, because there's a logging road we turn off of to go to the trail. And these logging trucks move through there way too fast. So if I don't get the dogs back into the vehicle, they're going to be wandering around that road till my wife figures out that I'm not home. And so we're like the Marine Corps when it comes to animals. We leave nobody behind. So I was hell bent on at least getting as far as the car and getting the dogs in. If I drop dead then, fine. But as I'm coming down the hill, people ask, what are you thinking? About your relatives? Did you see a light? Did you hear voices? Think about your wife. You know what I was thinking about? 2 weeks from that day, I had my first TED Talk scheduled on, the suicide prevention. I was coming out at age 52. Nobody knew that I was depressed and suicidal. My wife, my family, and my friends, nobody. And
my goodness.
Oh, yeah. And like a lot of people in that position, we never tell anybody because, A, we don't want to burden people. B, if you tell a clinician that you're having thoughts of suicide, you get a 3-day all expenses paid vacation with no belt or shoestrings.
There's no, I have to correct you. It's not all expenses paid.
Yeah. Well,
unfortunately, you pay quite a bit because insurance won't always pick that up. But yes, I understand.
So I never told anybody. So I'm coming out. I'm going to do my TED Talk. It's a suicide prevention TED Talk. The premise was start the conversation on suicide because as I was creating it, I realized that even though, at the time one person died every 15 minutes in the U.S. of suicide, nobody talked about it. But if you mention it, everybody's got a story. Everybody. So I'm going down the hill and I'm crying because I'm thinking if I could have just gotten to that TED Talk, think of all the lives I could have saved.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm not going to get to do that. So
the meaning behind that, really wanting to share that experience and offer that up and help others.
Yeah, because what happens, Nicole, is almost every time I speak, every time but one that I've spoken and told the story about my car breaking down, get it fixed, buy a new one, or I could just kill myself, at least one person, sometimes more, they have chronic suicidal ideation, and they do not know it has a name. They just feel like they're some kind of freak because of the way their brain works. And the relief when they find out, I had a young woman at a college show come up. She goes, thank you for your keynote. I said, you're welcome. She goes, I got to tell you, it made me weep. I go, how did it make you weep? She goes, remember your story about the car, get it fixed, buy a new one, you could just kill yourself? I go, yeah. She goes, I've had those thoughts for as long as I can remember. And I didn't know that had a name. I just thought I was some kind of freak and all alone. And when you said that out loud, I realized for the first time in my life that I was not alone, and I wept. That's my ROI. That's my why right there.
Oh, goodness. So it's so satisfying for you to have other people have some awareness about that and incredible relief.
Yes. And my hope is that I've steered them far enough off the path to suicide they'll live a normal life. And not too long after I had that thought, I was waiting for a young man to pick me up after a show at a college. It was dusk, starting to snow, and I could hear a river in the distance. And I was thinking about all the people that came up after these shows that maybe I steered off the path to suicide. And I said to myself, oh my goodness. I'm like that character, George Bailey, in It's a Wonderful Life. I've been shown what these people's lives would be like if I were not there to let them know they were not alone. So, and Nicole, my second thought was, oh, great. Now I can't kill myself because I'd take all these people with me.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so there's a protocol, as you well know. Are you depressed? Yes. Thoughts of suicide? Yes. Do you have a plan? Yes. I've got half a dozen plans. Which one do you want to hear? Yeah. Do you want to hear them all, or just the ones that involve you?
Oh goodness!
I know that scares the therapists. But I think there should be 2 more questions that would save lives. The next question should be, if somebody's has a plan, but it's not particularly detailed, doesn't really have time, place, method. My next question to them would be, well, are you going to kill yourself? And then if they said no, then my last question would be, okay, then tell me why not. Make them give voice. My friends, my family, my animals, my whatever reason it is, I want to hear it.
People will often say my religion.
Yeah. My religion. So that, and I think if we allowed people to give voice to their thoughts of suicide without worrying about getting, I met a guy in San Diego. I'm doing a comedy thing, and we're talking at the table, and they always ask, do you do anything besides stand-up comedy? Yes, I do suicide prevention, speaking, so forth and so on. And I describe my chronic suicidal ideation. I'm on the way to the bathroom. This guy catches up with me. He goes, Frank, I've got it. I go, what do you got? He goes, I have that. I didn't know it had a name, that chronic suicidal ideation. He goes, and I want you to know, I've never told anybody that. And gentleman's 69 years old. He said, I've never told anybody that, including my therapist.
Oh, goodness.
You know why? Because of the 5150 in California? 5150, the statute and the law that says if you tell your therapist that.
They're mandated.
Yeah, so I think if we could allow people to give voice to their thoughts of suicide without worrying about, because, people, when somebody dies by suicide, I often hear, they never said anything. Why didn't they reach out? Why, I had no idea. Never gave me any hints, which we both know is not true, because what it is 9 out of 10 people do give hints in a week leading up to a suicide. You just have to know what you're listening for.
What are you listening for? Can you describe to our audience what to look for and what to listen for?
Well, with depression, I would look for, has trouble getting up in the morning, rallies in the afternoon. The other big one is letting their personal hygiene go. Usually well put together, but their hair's a little dirty, their clothes a little dirty. I speak to dentists because they have a high rate of suicide, and I talk about their clients, their patients. I said, look, if you get a patient who comes in there and the hair's a little dirtier than usual, clothes are a little, unkempt, and they're usually really good at taking care of their teeth, and you realize they haven't been taking as good care of their teeth, that could be an indication. Also, eat too much, can't eat, sleep too much, can't sleep. Now, with thoughts of suicide, writing about suicide, Googling suicide appears as a theme in artwork. They're going around, they're getting their affairs in order, of course, collecting the means, whether it's stockpiling medication or buying a weapon. The giving away prized possessions, because they want to make sure they go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. And if they give away a pet, that's kind of top of the pyramid of the prized possessions. And here's a counterintuitive one that scares me. It is they're depressed for it seemed like ever. And then all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, they're happy. And you're happy because they're happy finally. But it may be they've chosen time, place, method, and they know the pain is coming to an end. And that's another myth, by the way. When somebody dies by suicide, somebody famous, I get calls, Facebook messages, texts from my friends and family. It's like they all got together. And they're wondering why Anthony Bourdain or Kate Spade died by suicide. And so they go, well, Frank's suicidal. He'll know. So...
You're the representative.
Yeah, I'm the international representative for suicidal people. And they say to me, why did Anthony Bourdain want to kill himself or Kate Spade want to kill herself? And my answer is, chances are, neither one wanted to die. They just simply wanted to end the pain. I believe it's all about pain. Same thing with drug addiction, alcohol addiction, or substance use disorders. Guy, I used to work the cruise ships, and a gentleman came up to me, and they always have a meeting, an AA meeting on the ship every day, friends of Bill. And he said, Frank, do you know the connection between drugs, alcohol, and suicide? And I said, well, I know the obvious connections. He goes, well, here's what you may have never thought about. Both suicide and substance abuse disorders oftentimes are about killing the pain. One's just more long-term solution than the other. So that's what, when I do my keynote, that's what I teach. I teach QPR, question, persuade, refer. It's a curriculum. And then there's one called Working Minds out of the University of Colorado, and it's suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue. And the woman who taught me that is my co-author, Sally Spencer Thomas, Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas, and Sarah Gare, who is a therapist who teaches QPR to first responders, suicide prevention to first responders. She wanted to buy a book for the men, mostly men, that she teaches, and she went to Barnes & Noble, couldn't find a book on men's mental health. So she went on Amazon and couldn't find a specific book all about men's mental health. So we have created a 4-book series. First one came out in March. Second one comes out Father's Day. It's an anthology. We surveyed men, and we asked them what kind of advice they wanted from whom and how. And they said, look, we want advice from men who have had particular struggles. We want to hear about their struggles, and then we want to hear how they're coping. How did they claw their way back? So each story, drugs, alcohol, bankruptcy, divorce, each story is 1,500 words. First 500 words, things are good. Second 500 words, things went really bad. Last 500 words, here's how I'm coping. And around that, we wrap clinical information, resources, exercises, just good, solid advice for men. And we were going to write one book, Nicole, but it became 1,000 pages. Because we had 48 guys, 50 guys, plus all that information. So it's now a 4-book series called Guts, Grit, and the Grind, a mental mechanics manual. And the whole idea is we made it look like a car owner's manual.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's with car metaphors. That's what the ladies called me. Sarah and Sally got together, and Sally knew me. And she said, let me call Frank, see if he'll make it funny, and see if he'll put the car metaphors in. So they called me. They said, we're writing a book on men's mental health. We want you to make it funny. I want you to put the metaphors in. And I said, wait a minute. You two ladies are writing a book on men's mental health? Don't you think you might need, I don't know, a man? A man! So I said, look, make me a co-author. Let me voice the books for Audible. I just got done voicing the first one. It's up on Audible now. Let me voice it for Audible, and I'll make it funny. And, there's a lot of car brain metaphors. If men took care of their cars like they take care of their brains, you better buy a bus pass because, don't you wish the man in your life had a check engine light? It goes off. He goes to the mental mechanic, and the guy goes, Bob, no wonder you're depressed. You're 2 quarts low on serotonin. So that's kind of how it's. Plus, with a car, you're a therapist. You should always have a safe care plan because things. Basically, that's car maintenance. Essentially, with a car, you got to change the oil, rotate the tires, so forth and so on. With mental illness, you have to have a safe care plan: diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation, medication. And then there's you need a safety plan if things go sideways. And you buy a car, what do? You get a AAA membership. You got a spare tire in the trunk. You got flares and a first aid kit.
I can hear how much fun you had with this.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. I can just hear you being like, and then we could do this, an engine light, and it's all clicking.
Yeah, airbag, seat belt.
Oh, I can just imagine you were off to the races.
Yeah, we had a good time, and we, it's not jokes, but it's just funny little twists and turns. There's one
play on words and all of this.
There's one thing where they're listing, questions men ask themselves, and it's all very serious. First 5 or 6. The last one I put in boxers or briefs. So it just comes out of nowhere.
Yes.
And then,
that's great. That's the anomaly you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. You're reading along and all makes, and then there was another one where hobbies or something, working on cars, woodworking, metalworking, and the last one is ferret racing. And so
I can see you. This was like a playground for you.
Yes.
What a beautiful thing to combine your 2 major skills on, the comedy writing and also making these books that, are going to continue to share this message of mental health. I just imagine it must have been deeply satisfying.
Because 8 out of 10 people roughly who die by suicide in the U.S. nowadays are men. And men tend to, it's male toxicity, masculine toxicity. Anyway, big boys don't cry, basically. And it's not just mental. I mean, it's physical as well. It's, they don't get the colonoscopy. They don't take the PSA test. They get chest pains. They're sure it's a burrito. Men tend not to reach out mentally for mental health or physical health, certainly for mental health. And so we're hoping that, again, the premise of the book is to start the conversation. Make it. Our goal is to make talking about depression, thoughts, and suicide as easy as talking about sports or the weather.
Now, speaking of that, let's think about what I'd like to hear your opinion about why we, and this is pre-COVID I'm talking about, have experienced a real spike in suicide. And you can correct me because I bet you know these numbers, but it's a 30% increase. And is that in the last 5 years?
I think it's since 2012, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think part of it is what they call deaths of despair, because most of the men in that 8-man group out of 10 who die by suicide are 45 to 54 and generally Caucasian. And what's happening is the good blue-collar, middle-class income jobs have been disappearing very quickly. Mm-hmm. Manufacturing, some of it, only about 12 to 15% of the manufacturing went overseas, contrary to popular belief. The other 85 to 88% was taken over by AI and robotics.
I see. So there are folks that are just regular folks who were doing manufacturing jobs are now out of a job and out of an identity.
Exactly, because men tended to attach their identity to their jobs. And, you got a high school education, you went to trade school, went to work in manufacturing, and you had a good job with great wages and benefits. Mm-hmm. And now you're 50, 52 years old and cast adrift. And maybe, there's a retraining program, but how long is it going to take you to get back to where you were financially?
So there's some shame. You're thinking shame, humility. Yep. Okay.
Stigma then leads perhaps to drinking and other substance use disorders, and so they're called I guess in the vernacular, deaths of despair. Mm-hmm. Their identity is gone, and so construction is the number one occupation at risk for suicide, and people always ask me why construction. Well, again, mostly male. And males who are rough and tough, nail driving, saw running, again, the kind of guys who are not going to reach out. That's a broad brush, but generally are not going to reach out for help, especially mentally help. So that's
what I understand too from clients that I've treated is that it's of course physically demanding, and so you're often going to be using some kind of pain relief something, and there's drinking, and that pairs with it as well. Is that what you're finding?
Well, opioids, 65,000 deaths, 66,000 last year, and we don't know how many of those were accidental overdoses and how many were suicides. Mm-hmm. I believe overprescribed. You go to the hospital for one thing and you come out with an addiction to opioids.
That's right.
I think they're way overprescribed when there are alternative medications that are not near as addictive. And fortunately, Nicole, yours truly happens to be allergic to opioids.
Aha.
Yeah,
that is fortunate.
I throw up like Lindsay Lohan after a 3-day weekend, and and so I can't. They have to give me something else. It's something to have to do with my inner ear, I think, because I have work cruises, but I get wretchedly seasick. Any kind of motion, for whatever reason, and when you take an opioid, there's a little bit of that sort of dizzy, and it's just enough for me. I spent the night in the hospital after a colonoscopy. Nobody does that because I was thrown up so hard.
Oh, goodness.
So it's kind of a good thing.
I guess so. So let me think with you, because of our audience are mostly folks, not all, but middle age and post-middle age. Some are parents, some are grandparents, some don't have kids. But if you have a suspicion that a family member or a child or a grandchild or whatever is suicidal or depressed, what is your advice to those guardians or parents?
Well, I think you should learn the signs and symptoms of depression, thoughts of suicide. And I tell you, a great place to learn it for very little money is, I bet you know about this, it's mentalhealthfirstaid.org.
I don't know about it,
but
Lord. I'm going to put it in the program notes.
Yeah, there's an adult course, and for looking for signs and symptoms in adults. There's a youth course for the same thing, and it's 8 hours, and normally they charge nothing, $0 to maybe $25, And the only reason they charge $25, as far as I can tell, is they provide lunch.
I see. Okay.
And they give you a binder, and it covers everything from major depressive disorder to non-lethal self-harm to bipolar schizophrenia, schizoaffective.
Wow.
They send you home with that. So let's say you've got a grandchild and you think perhaps they're depressed. You can turn in the ring binder to depression, and there'll be a list of symptoms and signs. And then there'll be advice on, how do you... The second thing I would do, if you believe you have a child with a mental illness or a family member with a mental illness, is go to your local chapter of NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness. They have a chapter in just about every county, although I'm speaking in Nebraska next week, on Thursday, actually, virtually. And I mentioned NAMI. They go, yeah, Frank, here's the problem. There's one NAMI office in Omaha. And there's a lot more Nebraska than that. So, but NAMI has classes for families. I've got a friend who has a child who's schizoaffective, and it almost broke up the family until he went to NAMI, took a 12-week course on how do you live with, help find, how do you help someone live with someone who has schizoaffective disorder, and it saved the marriage, saved the family. Because they have families.
National Alliance of the Mentally Ill, I believe.
Mental illness.
Mental illness. Yep.
And they've got peer-to-peer counseling. They got family-to-family counseling. Again, so other families going through the same thing, you realize you're not alone. You share resources. So that's where I send people to go take the mental health first aid course. Not going to cost you much. What you do is you put in mentalhealthfirstaid.org. They have you put in a radius, like 25 miles, and your zip code. And it'll tell you every class they're going to throw in that zip code in the next 6 months, and they're everywhere. So it's a great way to. It's a great mental health 101.
That's a great resource, and I will put both of those in the program notes. I wanted to ask you, Frank, what is the legacy that you would like to leave?
Well, I'm hoping at some point, Nicole, and this is audacious, that somebody says to me, "Hey, what are you doing these days? You still speaking on suicide prevention?" No, nobody's killing themselves. My goal is to work my way out of a job.
I see.
If we could just bring the rate down, if we could stop, now like last year was 47,000 people, one every 11 minutes. If we could just begin to bring that down, and teens, it's gotten far worse since 2012. Young people, middle school, high school.
Yes.
Even elementary school. I'm doing a fundraiser virtually on the 26th of June for it's a foundation in Portland, Our City Cares, and they reach out to high schools with information for the students and the parents in the Portland and Vancouver, Washington area. And because it's it's the rates of self-reported major depressive disorder and thoughts of suicide in young people has spiked. In part, by the way, because since 2012, it turns out young people are spending about 40% less FaceTime. I'm not talking about Facebook FaceTime. I'm talking about in-person FaceTime with their peers.
Face-to-face, yeah.
Yeah, hanging out at the mall like we did when we were kids. And the loneliest people in the country at this point, from all I've read, are not octogenarians, people in nursing homes. It's teenage girls, teenage young women are the loneliest. And I can't say there's a connection with the smartphone. I believe there's a correlation. I can't believe it's a coincidence that all that time staring into the phone.
And all of the comparison, too, that they don't look like Kim Kardashian, and they think that that's, sort of something that people can aspire to and achieve.
And bullying. And I didn't, I had an incident in February where I was bullied online, and it changed my perspective, because I figured I'm 63. How do you bully somebody online? And I got bullied. I got death threats. I changed my phone number. I deactivated 3 social media accounts. People were publishing maps to my house. So, helpful Google My Business page. It gives you a map right to my house.
That's right.
So I now have a whole new respect. And here's the thing. Those people who bullied me, I will never meet them, chances are. But if you're a teenager and you're in high school and the people that are bullying you have to go back day after day after day. And when I was a kid, when you left school, you left the bully behind. Now they carry it home in their pocket. So I have a great respect and far more sympathy for young people nowadays in this being bullied on. I mean, you know, I'm a comic and I'm an adult, and some guy called me and he goes, because I was on a cruise ship, I came back on my own dime. Everybody thought I had the virus. Nobody on my ship ever had it, but they thought I did, so they came after me. And a guy said, "You came back to this county to kill everybody." And I go, "No, I've got a list, and you just made the VIP section."
He didn't appreciate that.
No. Well, another guy called and threatened my life. He goes, "I know where you work out. I know what time you work out. I'm going to be there today, and I'm going to kill you." And I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Listen, well, know this before you do. I've been trying to do that, kill myself for about 40 years. And B, I don't want to die, but I'm not scared of it. So just click."
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Well, have you seen the show on Netflix called Afterlife with Ricky Gervais?
I have.
Okay, well, I'm watching like second episode, and his boss is trying to cheer him up, and Ricky goes, "Look, don't try to cheer me up. I'm depressed and I'm suicidal. If it gets too bad, I'll just kill myself. Sadly, it's kind of my superpower." And man, I sat up straight. I thought somebody on the writing staff or Ricky has chronic suicidal ideation. Well,
I see.
Next episode, two guys come up to him, two young people, and they got knives, and they want to take his wallet. And he goes, "What are you going to do if I don't give you my wallet? And we're going to kill you." And Ricky goes, "For most people, that would be an inducement to turn over my wallet. But as luck would have it, I've been thinking about that for, since my wife died."
I remember that scene. That's a pretty, it's a very interesting show, but it's pretty dark.
Yes, and I believe either Ricky or somebody on the writing staff has chronic suicidal, because those are thoughts I have all the time. But neurotypical people don't generally, I have vivid imagination. I made the mistake of telling a friend of mine, another comedian, one of my daydreams, and after I got done blocking, lighting, dialogue, sound bites, he goes, "Man, I got to get better daydreams." But in one of them, I go to 76 station on the way to Portland to the airport to catch a plane. It's, it's dark 30, and I'm getting myself a cup of coffee. Guy comes in with a gun, robs the place, puts the gun to my head, and goes, "Give me your money or I'll kill you." I've been trying to do that for 40 years. If I had known it was going to be on this day in this place, death by idiot, I would have just relaxed and waited for it to happen. But yeah, it is sort of my superpower in that way. I don't want to die. I'll tell you the other piece of the superpower puzzle. People kept saying you need to read Brene Brown. I thought, how good could she be? So I bought the book on vulnerability. Well, I realized halfway through, oh my God, vulnerability is my superpower, because I get up on stage and I bare my soul and I get choked up. And the second thing she said, and I've said it in many different ways, but she said it best, and now I quote her, talking about, people want to talk about their issues, their mental health struggles. And she said, "I'm so comfortable in my dark, I have no trouble spending time with you in yours." And that's how I feel. I said, I'm so comfortable in my...
I see.
Yeah, so a friend of mine said at one point, somebody was telling him about his struggles with the mental illness and, how bad it had gotten, and then apologized for burdening him with it. And he was like, "Man, I'd rather sit here for 3 or 4 hours and be here for you and listen to you talk about this than spend 30 minutes in a church somewhere listening to your eulogy." So
it's so interesting because I've had this talk with other therapists, and it's really hard to be friends with people who don't understand and I guess in some weird way surround themselves with speaking about the most darkness that anyone can feel. We do it a lot. We do it every day. And so to go to a cocktail party or to have a friendship that feels very superficial and it's about maybe things and not feelings or ideas is almost painful. It's like I just can't talk about something this superficial when there's so much depth there, and it's so much more real, and it's so much more about the human experience.
And one of the things we say in the book is you need a pit crew. You need people to surround yourself with people who who know what you're living with and are there for you, and you can have real conversations. The guy that I work out with is a retired veterinarian, and he has an idiopathic form of Parkinson's.
Oh.
There's no reason he should have it, and he's a very slow moving, fortunately, case of it. But we can talk freely about and joke actually about his Parkinson's. He jokes about it. I joke about it. And also, he knows that I live with depression, thoughts of suicide. So one day he said to me, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm wretchedly depressed," without missing a beat.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "What does that look like?" I said, "Well, remember when you were a young guy, you're like 18 years old, and every other thought you had was about sex?" He goes, "Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's every other thought for you now? It's 63. Netflix."
Mm-hmm.
Going back to bed and binge watching Ozark.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to have somebody. Now, the flip side of that, Nicole, every now and then I like to mess around with neuronormal people. I don't know if you ever had this impulse, but, how you doing? "No, I'm living the dream. Great. Blah, blah, blah." Every now and then when I'm really tired and the editor in my head goes to sleep, I got in an Uber one day after doing 2 3-hour suicide prevention trainings, and nice young kid, and our eyes lock in the mirror. And he goes, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And I thought, okay, I'll have a little fun with him. I go, "I'm depressed and suicidal. How about you?"
Oh, God.
Yeah, he's driving along. You can tell he's thinking. And our eyes lock in the mirror again. And he goes, "What am I supposed to say to that?" I said, "Do you really want to know?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "You're supposed to ask me if I have a plan." So he goes, "Do you have a plan?" And then there's a pause, Nicole, and he goes, "Does it involve Uber?" Oh, man, that's brilliant.
Oh, goodness.
But sometimes you just want to, when people ask you, you just want to tell them. It's, but you don't want to be a flip side of that. I'm in the driveway one day last summer. I'm doing some yard work. I'm really depressed. And I'm thinking I'll tell my wife as she's going to work. And then I thought, you know what? It's not going to make me feel any better. It's going to make her feel worse. And the benefit of coming out, by the way, as depressed and suicidal is that she can be there for me, and we can oftentimes joke about it. For example, one of my triggers is disappointing her. So, or anybody whose opinion I respect, but especially her. Mm-hmm. So if I do something stupid, I'll say to her, "Listen, I'm sorry I did that. Are you mad?" And she'll go, "Oh, no, I'm not mad. I'm no." So, it allows us to laugh.
You can be playful about it.
And she's not going to get blindsided by my depression thinking she's done something wrong. If she knows I'm cycling down, then she knows whatever, if I appear grumpy, it's not her.
That's real intimacy, by the way, to know somebody so well that you have a special language, which is that disappointed, that you guys know that's your secret language of, yep, listen, we both know that's my trigger and we can be playful about it. I mean, that's really a beautiful thing.
Well, it came about because I finally came out as depressed. But, I got an email from a guy in Switzerland about a month ago, and he is depressed. He's 42, lovely wife, darling 8-year-old daughter, good job. But he sent me an email and he said, "Frank, I just saw your TED Talk, your first TED Talk." He goes, "I've been depressed." I said, I can't remember the last time I was happy. And I thought I was all alone. And I stumbled across your TED Talk. And I realized, for the first time ever, that I'm not alone. But he has not told his wife or anybody he works with. So I encouraged him. I said, "Look, when the time comes, when you are comfortable doing it, I think you will find, if you share with people that you trust these things, it will ease your burden a bit." So hopefully that's the power of a TED Talk, is that, somebody on the other side of the world
sure
logs on. By the way, and when you ask me what would I do if somebody suspected their child or cousin or brother or spouse was depressed, I normally suggest the person who is concerned sit down and watch my first TEDx with that person you're concerned about. Watch them watching me, because I'm very upfront about how my brain works and why it works that way and how close I came. And a friend of mine, he did that with his wife. He's watching her watching me, and He goes, Frank, it was amazing. He goes, she turns to me when she'd been she never told anybody outside the family she lived with depression. She said to him, okay, A, I didn't know anybody talked about that out loud. B, I never knew anybody talked about that out loud on TEDx stages in front of God and the world. And so we do a little coffee clatch, myself and half dozen people who, not always 6 of us, but we get together about once a month, have a cup of coffee. And forgive me, we call it the Crazy Coffee Clatch. And we go in and we all take off our game faces for an hour. And we're just ourselves. And we can say those dark things to each other that makes, every now and then somebody behind us will hear us say something and go, oh, excuse me, just 1 second. Were you guys talking about somebody jumped off a 10-story building, and did one of you just say 10 stories is not enough? I'd go at least 15.
Oh, gosh.
Because, you could actually survive 10 stories. I looked at him, I go, yeah, man, you need to hit terminal velocity is the term you're looking for.
Oh, goodness.
But
goodness.
My friends who are mentally ill, that they're not uncomfortable by that. And then at the end of the hour, we put our game faces back on, and we go back out in the world. I met a guy, an osteopathic anesthesiologist who lives with chronic suicidal ideation. He goes, Frank, yeah, I put my game face on, but some days, by the end of the day, it's like wax. I can feel it beginning to sag a bit. I know I'm cycling down if I can, and the way he let his staff know, by the way, and I'm proud of him for doing this, every morning he used to go in, there's a whiteboard there where they do the exams, and he would put a smiley face on the whiteboard. And one morning he went in, and instead of a smiley face, he put the eyes and then a straight line. Well, his assistant comes in, takes one look at the board and goes, okay, what's wrong? So there's his hint.
Yes.
Sometimes verbal, sometimes
he's being honest. Yeah.
And he said, Frank, it made all the difference. She picked up on it immediately. And so he's working his way through that. And he's in process now. He was keeping it to himself up to that point. For whatever reason, he drew a straight line, and she picked up on it immediately.
That sounds like it was a really important first step. Frank, tell our audience where they can find out more about you, because I am sure they will want to find out more about your TEDx and more about your really beautiful work with suicide prevention. Give us some websites.
Okay, the website is The Mental Health Comedian, or as we say down south, The Mental Health Comedian. And by the way, Nicole, if you go there and you give me an email address, you can download the unabridged audio book, that first book, Guts, Grit, and the Grind, a Men's Mental Mechanics Manual. I voice it, and the entire thing is there, and you get an MP3 in exchange.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
So you don't have to pay a dime. And then I coach TEDx. It's yourtedxcoach.com.
Oh.
Your TEDx Coach. And if you go there for an email address, you get a PDF that's 6 things you can do to kill your chances of getting a TEDx. Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. I love to hear from my listeners. Send me an email at NicoleChristina.com. It's no secret that everyone's feeling pretty restless and unsettled right now. Our lives are upside down, and the future is feeling pretty uncertain. But if you're anything like me, organizing my stuff can help me feel a little calmer. It's something I can do to help me feel a little more in control and in charge of my own life. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. It's called Too Much Stuff. And Too Much Stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical. It's realistic. The lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long exploratory, super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety. So being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.